Hey, folks, we're back with another episode of Real Talk Fishing. On this episode, we're going to dive in with Mr. Iceman himself, Joel Nelson. Now, I call him the Iceman because he is an ice fishing guru, spends a ton of time on the ice, but he spends a ton of time on the open water as well. He just knows all things outdoors, whether it's turkey hunting, ice fishing, open water fishing, products, media, content. He is the man. If you don't know Joel Nelson, lift that rock over that you've been living under because he is out there on everything you see in the outdoors and just an all around, just a great guy. Good dude, knows his stuff. We're going to get some insights on industry, some fishing tips, and just a little bit of what's going on in Joel's world. So stay tuned and tune into this Real Talk Fishing podcast with No Limits with Mr. Joel Nelson. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into this episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits. I'm your host, Brian Bashore with Walleye Guys, and today we have the Iceman himself, Mr. Joel Nelson. We're going to just wet a line and dive right into it with Joel. And if y'all don't know who Joel Nelson is, you need to flip over that rock you're living under, because if you open up a magazine, if you're online, anywhere you go, Joel's there. Whether he's modeling or if he's on the other side of the camera or the microphone, he's there. He's everywhere in this outdoor hunting and fishing world. So without further ado, Joel, good morning, my friend. How we doing?
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
What's going on in your neck of the woods over there? I mean, it's 1st of February and it kind of feels like spring.
Yeah, it's crazy. You said Iceman, and I thought, boy, most years, not so much this year. It's just crazy. I got some good fishing in just before Christmas. Crept on some thin ice, but it was backwater stuff. Maybe 3 feet deep. No big deal if I went in. But the stuff around here now, it's getting soft on top. We got a couple inches, but man, no cold weather in sight. Which for January. Oh, it feels weird. I mean, we're February now, but throughout most of the winter, we've just had such mild temperatures. I've never seen an ice season like this. You probably haven't either.
No, it's short. I mean, I'm not gonna lie; it doesn't hurt my feelings a whole lot. I don't spend as much time in the ice as you do. But I was trying to do this year and was like, I'm gonna go out and do some more and spend some time on the river, and I did but literally 4 or 5 days, and it was great. But real fast, obviously the rivers can go real quick with all that current moving, but it's 45 degrees here yesterday. And it's, there's probably still another couple of weeks for a little bit further up north, and you're over in Minnesota, and it's a little cooler, in certain parts of the country, but I don't think you're going to get, all of February.
Well, that is the silver lining, though. You're talking about open water fishing, and I don't care where you are, even in the ice belt, there's usually some rivers to fish, and they're going to be opening sooner. I'm thinking about most years we've got, 16, 18 inches of ice on our southern portion of the ice belt kind of areas.
Right.
If I go up north, I've got 2 feet or better of ice. That just isn't going to be the case this year. Like late ice is going to be not that late in spring crappie fishing and all the other stuff that I love to do. Like that's going to come earlier than ever. So that's pretty exciting to me, just kind of thinking about those things.
It is for sure. Are you going to the Lake of the Woods Aglow event in a couple weeks?
That's a good question. I was considering it. It might be the main thrust of ice a lot of us get, just because up there they have it. Not a lot of places do. So yeah, I'm trying to make that one work along with like the issue is like this is photo shoot season for the ice industry, right? Once you get into mid to late February into March, most places get their stuff. If it is from overseas, it comes over in a container. If it's local stateside, they've got it ready for reps to take out samples to sell to stores. Well, those same samples we use in photos and try and show off. And normally I'm up on Lake of the Woods or Lake Winnipeg somewhere at the tail end of March, just trying to fit it all in. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think this year that's going to be in February, not in March like it typically is.
It's going to be now. So
yeah, right.
Clear the calendar or leave it open so you can get all these done.
Exactly.
The work comes first, and that is a work event up there. It's an Association of Great Lake Outdoor Writers that Joel and I are both members of. I host that out at Riverbend Resort, which those guys are just awesome there. And it's a fun trip at our sleeper shacks, and I'm just like, he's amazing.
Yep.
The place, the food's phenomenal. The host, just everything's just awesome.
They know what they're doing. I like going up there. I've parked at Paul's. I've used his place for open water, and we've ice fished up there too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Riverbend.
Yep, they are good people, and that event is just the bite's good. You just catch fish all day. Maybe they're small saugers, whatever the case is, but you just catch fish all day. And there's potential. It's like the woods. I mean, something can swim through any minute that just goes, whoa, hey.
100%.
So speaking of that, it's photo season. Tell us about, everybody who doesn't know Joel Nelson. Like I said, if you don't, you're living underneath a rock, folks. Flip that sucker over. The guy is everywhere. What is the new venture you got going on while we're doing all these photos?
Yeah. Well, so for years, I have been in the fishing industry doing a bunch of things and ended up working with a main photographer. His name's Matt Addington. And Matt's done most of my work and the things that we do together from a media perspective for a long time. And he's really well renowned in the hunting side of the world. He just got back from a South African safari shooting for God knows what client, Bergera Rifles, Maven Binoculars, like big names in the industry. Like he's the guy, right? And he just happens to live up the hill from me, like a rifle shot away. And so Matt and I started doing some stuff together. And then we also have a mutual friend, Jesse Dolan, who does SEO and web stuff. And we thought, we're already working together anyway. Why don't we start an agency of sorts, but one that's more directed towards outdoor type ventures, because we're already doing that. So now we have Resonate Outdoors, and Resonate is, like I said, for lack of a better term, an agency, but we're small to middle size that really get it from a boutique branding perspective and looking at marketing for them, where we can help. I can help craft stories. I'm a writer. I'm kind of a TV or on video personality. I can help with that side of things. I do social media as well. That's one thing that I help run. Matt does all the creative photo and video that you could ever ask for. And then Jesse builds websites, does SEO. That's really his bread and butter, and making sure that any companies we work with, top ranked on Google, easily found, well represented in all digital online spaces. So we are a digital marketing firm that, has catered to the fishing industry for the most part, as well as the hunting industry. So that's our gig. That's what we got going right now.
And it's a needed niche. I mean, there's a few out there trying to do it, but like you got Matt's talent is second to none. I mean, the guy's got skills, and if you all have read Joel's stuff, whether you know it or not, Joel's a phenomenal writer. When I was with the magazine, did a bunch. He just does a bunch. It's good. A lot of the St. Croix stuff you read, a lot of the press releases and things like that. I mean, Josh is over there now writing a lot of that, but it's just, you got some of the best in the business now working under one name and one roof. So check them out at where can they find you? ResonateOutdoors.com?
ResonateOutdoors.com. Yeah. And any of the social channels too at Resonate Outdoors.
Of course, you're digital. You got to be on them social channels. It never fails though. All the digital agencies, the social channels are usually they're not very active. They don't have a lot on it because you're too busy running everybody else's stuff. You just don't get around to it.
Yeah, that's the shoemaker's kids don't have shoes kind of routine, right?
Yep. That's how that works. You've been in the industry for a long time doing just that, media, creating content. What type of, and now you're on that, the other side of it as the agency, what are you seeing as maybe in trends kind of moving forward? Maybe with some, I don't know, maybe you've had to work with some influencers or not, but you've been a pro staff manager for companies as well and managing that. What do you see kind of trends in the industry and the media? And then I got a few more questions.
Yeah. It's interesting because I work with a number of different brands, and no two brands are alike. Their needs, their wants, whether they want to work with influencers, people like me that are kind of influencers, but also have been around for a while and kind of have a name or a following. All of these brands, though, are repeatedly, as you're talking about trends, moving towards a lot more video. And everybody wants video, video. And they want it cheap. And the hard part is we want to always maintain quality.
Of course.
Like, the deal, Brian. I'm preaching to the choir here. Like you're burning up inside.
Yep.
But what we've been providing to a lot more clients, rather than just a hard drive full of photos, or here you go, here's the videos, We're doing a lot more creative captioning for them, getting them ready, almost social ready, developing hashtag strategies based on SEO and those kinds of things. But another made trend as it comes to videos, the vertical format. Everybody wants them for Reels and for TikTok and things like that. So short, 10-second to 30-second, certainly less than 1 minute Reels in a vertical format. I've got a lot of brands that want as much of that as I can provide, and at times not much else. So it really tells you, back when we started, they wanted us to go to sports shows, right? They wanted us to stand in a booth, hawk a pack of jigs, and say, this is the best jig and the best colors. I use it for XYZ. And these days they want you and I to do some of the same stuff. They just want us to do it in a vertical format video for, Instagram and TikTok.
All right. Have you been to any shows this season yet?
I have. The St. Paul Ice Show is always the biggest and baddest one. I went to a couple other ones, and then a Cabela's Ice Classic as well. So yeah, all that's kind of past. Now we're already looking forward to the open water shows.
Were the crowds very good though? Did you know, was it down? I heard a few shows were like, this doesn't seem like they used to be.
100%. If I'm being honest, I don't know that after COVID, people view shows in the same light they used to. And even before that, at times attendance was waning. What I will say about shows is, from a consumer standpoint, they continue to be one of the best places to get a good price on something. I don't think that that's great for the industry. True. At times it's bloodletting. I mean, I see the prices that these people are haggling for, and I'm like, I work for these guys. I don't get it that cheap. I don't know how they're selling it at retail for that cheap in show environment. So I don't know that it's a good thing for us, but if you're a consumer and you want a deal on something, those shows are unbelievable.
Yeah. It may not be the number of people sometimes, but if they're the right people showing up, that's all that, matters in a sense. But if you're giving the milk away for free or next to it, then not good on the industry side of things.
And some of them have to fail, I think. Some of those shows have to go away. I mean, I don't think that every small Tom, Dick, and Harry retailer can have their own show, or every regional small podunk chunk of the ice belt can have their regional show. It might just reduce itself to a handful of them, with the St. Paul Ice Show kind of being the crown jewel of them all, and that might shrink in size too. We'll have to see. But you can't have a show when there aren't as many people. It's just kind of the reality of it.
No, I mean, the cost of putting them on is not getting cheaper, along with everything else. And then everybody's kind of being hit in different directions, and do they want to go to the show and they can go find everything digitally, find it online, watch the video, watch Joel's YouTube channel, go over here, go to your channel, my channel, anybody's, and get a lot of the same information in the product reviews, and just be like, I'm good. I've made my decision before I go there. Now, something to be said with putting that rod or that reel in your hand, before you buy it. But that's where certain, you and I and others come into play. These influencers that you may have to work with are they trustworthy people? And this is what they recommend. Are they sellouts? Are they jumping on this product because there's compensation from the company, or do they actually believe in it and back it? That's something we probably have to deal with plenty in this industry and throughout. What's your take on the influencer stuff? I mean, you've been a pro staff manager. You see exactly what I'm talking about. You're the real deal. I think I'm the real deal. There's plenty of people out there that are, and have been with these brands.
Yep.
But I mean, I see some of it, and a lot of times I'm like, that's not legit.
Yeah, I mean, you and I think are pretty aligned in how we feel about some of the things that are going on in our industry. And when it comes to influencers, the one thing I keep hearing, and I heard it from my bosses when I was a pro staff manager for different brands, and then I'm hearing it now, is that they want to get younger. They want to attract the next generation, and they're looking to YouTube type influencers to do that. And I tell you what, my kids are huge consumers of YouTube online content when it comes to fishing, guys. I mean, they are all over it, and I watch it too. And so it's really interesting, but there is a distinction, I think, as these companies want more and more of this youth, and they want more and more of these influencers, they're not always getting experience, or let's say reliability, or that same kind of reputation that goes along with some of the folks that have been around and doing it for a while. So you see mistakes. You see things that as an angler, you'd be like, wait a second, I don't know that makes a lot of sense. But a lot of times they're not doing it for education. They're doing it for loves and likes, right? Shares and making the algorithm go spike. And you're like, well, entertainment is one thing. I think we all do it to entertain, but I think there has to be, at least in my opinion, a deeper commitment to educate and inform, to make you better, to share what you've learned. Because if you're just doing it for entertainment, I think it's a limited growth strategy over the long haul. I think it's a short-term home run because it's cool and it's trendy and it's neat now. But where do you go from there if you don't have credibility, if you don't have that reputation? And so I'm much more concerned with my reputation and staying true to form and always trying to provide value to somebody watching what I'm putting on, rather than just trying to make them, smile for a short time. Right. That's at least my strategy. That's how I feel.
And that's the difference. It's the perfect one. That's the difference between a guy like yourself who's been around for 10 plus years, versus those 1 and 2 years, they're in and out type thing, because none of this success on this side of it happens overnight. It is a long, long game. Evolving.
Yep.
Right. Where you got to continue to find new avenues of ways, like a podcast, a YouTube, the social, the newsletters, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
New avenues of approach, in a sense, to get your message to the potential customers and clients, and ultimately, as a pro staffer or a pro on any level, working with your sponsors and partners, is you're an extended team of the sales force.
You're there to provide help on sales.
Kind of tend to forget sometimes.
Yeah, that's what you're there for, is to help provide
Nothing
sales.
Happens.
Right, 100%. I tell you what, I see a lot of brands focus heavily on that entertainment factor, and I think that it's interesting because we all want to see the brands that we know and love succeed because we believe in them. And if you work for a company like the companies I represent and you represent, there's stuff that we believe in. It's not it's not something that, hey, I think I can make a few bucks by repping Joe Z's product over there and I'll go run. That doesn't work.
No.
That's the Billy Blanks style. No. You're proselytizing. You're just trying to sell whatever somebody will put it in your hand and you'll sell it. That just doesn't work in the long haul for representation and being a member of the industry like we have been.
And it can be a little tougher for we're not young guys anymore, and you and I aren't out there flaunting our stuff in our bikinis, so we're not growing it organically that way either. We don't really have that working for us.
No.
You got to take the
100%. My following is not what some followings are in terms of numbers, but I'll always argue quality over quantity when it comes to the kinds of folks that we're trying to help out and inform and educate. I feel like a lot of the folks that follow me or my writing or what I do are anglers, pretty much like myself. They've got a family. They're trying to catch what they can on limited time that they have, make good on vacations. And some of them are even more serious than that. And they're looking to take the next step, maybe to do well in the tournament side of things, maybe to work in the industry. So yeah, those are the kinds of folks that I'm trying to please and focus on.
I hear you. I wrote that down, exact words, quality over quantity. And you mentioned that with Resonate Outdoors, there's so much pride in the work you do, but of course everybody wants it for cheap as possible because hey, I can just do this with my cell phone.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you can, but there's a whole post-production phase that happens. And then there's a whole certain way to put it out there where your SEO guy comes in, or you on social and having right verbiage that goes in a place that makes that go from those 10 likes to 1,000 likes. There's a difference.
Yes.
From some 18-year-old or a high school kid catching his bass and doing it, Now, granted, the stupidest, weirdest, wildest things go viral and uncut, unedited, raw.
Yeah.
which is great, but those don't happen every day.
No. And for years, back in the day, I was part of a TV show called In Depth Outdoors, and we filmed, I think I was probably involved for 7-8 seasons. And we chased all over the place after big fish and crazy bites. And one thing had to be crazier than the next just to be able to kind of get that same level of passion and interest from people. And I just found that to eventually feel like, hey, we kind of been there, we've done that. What's next? So I got to ride a unicycle out onto the ice and balance 4 balls on my hands and nose.
I'd love to see it.
Well, right. After a while, you start feeling like a trick pony or something like that. And the fishing and the block and tackle part of it is the part that still interests me. I think if you go to faraway destinations and you constantly travel to flying Canadian trips or parts of Alaska or only the best bites here and there, I do that. I like that. I've got nothing against that. But I think a lot of people are just interested in, can I catch some more basin crappies on my local lake? Where can I look for some walleyes off of breaks on the river that's near home? That's the kind of stuff that I think is as valuable as anything.
Oh, for sure. Where can I go that I don't need $140,000 boat to get me there? Right.
Right. 100%.
I mean, it's getting insane.
Yeah, it really is. You say that I
needs to get out of the office here for a second.
Yeah.
He's whining. Eat it out.
I worked the boat show here, the Minneapolis Boat Show, and there was not a lot of fishing boats sold. There was a lot of pontoons and deck boats and things like that. But yeah, I mean, fishing boats have gotten really expensive, and for a lot of folks, it's a little bit of a challenge to be able to afford the kinds of crafts that are out there. Now, that said, you look at the boat that you and I owned in the 90s or the year 2000 or even 2010, it's nowhere near the technological marvel of the rigs we have now. But right. the prices were more reflective of what an average honest salary could afford. And so that's, I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I just know that it's quickly turning into a rich man's game. I don't know.
Yeah, and the boat itself hasn't changed a whole lot when you talk about
the boat itself. Agreed. The whole. Yep. It's motors. It's the electronics.
The hole's the same. There's obviously. Yeah.
It's gotten crazy, and you spec a boat, and then all of a sudden you add all these things to it, and you're like, oh my god, that's a whole nother price into its own.
Yeah, I just added $20,000, or I'm going to throw $3,000 or $4,000 worth of lithium batteries in it, and do I need the 300 horse or the 400, or can I get by with the 250? And
yes,
I think people just need to sit back and realize what am I using this for? Where am I going? What kind of body of waters am I? It's one thing if you're a tournament guy; it's another if I'm just fishing in lakes. You just don't need that.
Right.
Maybe you want it, and if you can afford it, more power to you. Let's move some of them boats, but interest rates are not where they were during the big COVID boom, and inventory is more than caught up.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see hopefully see a pretty good market correction coming soon.
Right. Yeah. And I tell you, I'm with my kids fishing like they have been, especially small rivers nearby. That's just been a lot of fun. They wade fish constantly. You hop in a canoe, ride down to some island, park it, and just wade fish around for smallies and walleyes. That's still as enjoyable as going on, rocking 60 miles an hour across the other end of the lake and jigging up some walleyes and some hump. I tell you what, I enjoy it all, but there is something to be said for dumbing it down, being a little more simplistic, enjoying some local stuff. I've been doing more of that lately.
Yeah, keep it simple, right? The old KISS theory.
For sure.
So much to that. And I mean, I got the wife fly fishing. We go fly fishing a couple times a year, and it's great because I throw waders and one little tackle box that big in the side of my fly rod case.
Right.
That's it.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Yeah.
I can go anywhere.
How refreshing compared to
pull over on the side of the road in Colorado.
Yep. How refreshing compared to some of the stuff we have to pack for. I mean, your tournaments, it's got to be crazy the amount of gear you stash into a truck and boat. I mean, just to be prepared, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, heaven forbid it's the one thing you don't bring is the one thing that you needed, or so what you didn't win it, but that's what the guy was using that won it, and you're like, man, those are all hanging in my garage on the shelf in a brand new package that I didn't bring. So yeah, you pull most tournament guys' boats or trucks, and you're like, there's just a whole tackle store in here. You're like, I never know. You have a pretty good idea of what's going to work, where, what time of year, but now with the flux of new products and forward-facing sonar and forward-facing sonar baits, you're just like, walleye guys, I think, are worse than bass guys, notorious tackle junkies. Part of that's because, trolling and the huge variety of crankbaits that are out there.
That's true.
Better have them all. Better have those $12, $15 custom color painted ones. So,
colors are crazy because, like, on those areas that are heavily fished, especially the real clear water areas, like, it seems like color makes more of a difference than ever before for just a couple extra bites or big bites. And for you guys trying to cash checks, it's the way it's got to work, right? I mean, you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I'm not a huge custom color guy. I like natural, even in dirty water. But like you said, when it's pressured and clean and they're seeing everything out there, you throw the most gaudiest, ugly, off the wall thing out there. You're like, well, I guess they haven't seen that before. So it's an intrigue. They're interested, so they got to check it out.
Right.
They only do it once. Talk about all these electronics and stuff. You running any of the live imaging on your ice or in your boat?
Yep. I've got a Garmin unit that I run for forward facing, and I interchange the same unit between the boat and out on the ice. And it's been interesting. I've owned one now for, I think, darn near since the inception. I had the original Panoptix, and then went on to the the true live type format. So probably 4 or 5 years now. I've played with it, and it's interesting to me. I use it for a lot of different things, but for me, it's about learning and educating myself on the species that I'm after, and it's been fascinating for that. I mean, like, you just pick up and learn things that you never would have had a clue about before. It's wild. So I can name an example.
It is. It's educating the hell out of all of us.
Right. I was out on a small farm pond last year, and I was using a rattle bait, a little Northland Ripon Shad, and works great for bass in these farm ponds. But I was actually drawing schools of bluegills from as far as like 75 feet away, which I would have never believed I could draw, especially bluegills from that far away. But, you're over there ripping it, and you start to see one fish kind of quasi-respond from the far edge, and then eventually a few more follow, and a few more follow, and a few more follow. And I was learning that if I kept ripping it as they approached too closely, I would spook them off. Like, they were interested in the sound, but then they saw what it was, and they didn't really want it. It was too much. And I would attract bass, which were kind of picking these bluegills off. So I'm like, okay. So then I learned, like, when they were 20, 30 feet away, they were already on their way. I pull that thing out, and I drop little tungsten, and I'm catching bluegills. And I thought, there's no way. There's no other way you would have learned to do that or known that you were drawing fish from that far away without that technology. So pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't have seen it. And that's I mean, a lot of us ice guys do that same little trick. I was just doing it on the river the other day where the bite's dead. It just, it's middle afternoon, a low down, boom, drop down a Ripon Shad, rip the hell out of it, make a bunch of noise. I pulled out and immediately just the bottom, the walleye they lifted up, came off the bottom, like, oh, okay, there are fish there. And then followed it down, dropped, just a jig of minnow down there real quick and started catching them. Now we got on some white bass on the river the other day, which they weren't hitting that, but man, you ripped it twice and, they were pretty big. They're about 2 pound white bass. So they weren't too scared of it, but they came flying in and were like, hey, and then as soon as you dropped the spoon, it didn't matter what you dropped down, bam, they were on it. And I don't know if you ever caught big white bass through the ice, but that was different. That was kind of fun.
That is fun. Those things, open water, I love chasing them around open water. On Pepin, I fish them a lot where you'll see seagulls and other, they're blowing up shad out in the center of the basin, right? They're not really relating to anything. You just go out there and throw a safety pin spinner or any small jig and plastic in that school, and you're going to get just rocked. And through the ice, though, sounds really interesting because they fight like crazy in open water. I'm sure through an ice hole, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. It's just, obviously not like the open water, but it is good. And we have a little video up. I threw that up. I think it went out yesterday, and then or a couple nights ago, and then yesterday that spot on the lake was loaded with people. And I saw pictures last night of them. They all had a bunch, 6, 7, 8 nice big white bass laying on the ice, and I was like, awesome, you found them.
Yeah.
There's plenty of them there, but I think that's the last day for that too, because the ice has gone to crap since, and I wouldn't even been on it yesterday. So, but so the forward face sonar, you got the Garmin stuff around the Mega Live. It is. I think, as long as everybody uses it responsibly, I don't foresee it being a huge problem, but obviously tournaments and anglers are against it for it. They're all over the map. You think it's going to go anywhere, or you think it's here to stay?
It's here to stay. It's interesting. I was at an event with some of the biggest names in the fishing industry, guys that you and I know and love, and I don't want to name their names because they shared some pretty interesting thoughts on forward-facing sonar, but these would be your heroes and mine, the biggest of the big in the industry, and they love it and hate it, and I think a lot of us feel that way. They hate the fact that a lot of anglers now don't need to know as much to be successful. And it's like a lack of dedication thing. They can take this shortcut cheat code way to find fish without having to know a damn thing about them. I don't need to know their seasonal patterns, what spawning conditions they prefer, what water temps I'm going to find them where. They just run around with this thing on full blast in search mode, looking till they find, pitching till they catch, and then boom, they're instantly successful. And I think it's to this idea for me anyway, not much ventured, not much gained. Like I think it makes the experience a little empty. It's in some respects. And I think that's also why a lot of people have no problem keeping as many fish now as they do when they've got forward facing. And some people are very responsible with it, but others, I think of it from the DNR perspective. Like in our state, I have a buddy who's a fisheries manager, and he tells me, he's like, all of our fish limits are based on people not being successful. It was never this deal where you were going out to the lake and 90% of us were going to be successful. It was more the other way around. 10 or 20% were going to be successful. And fisheries limits were set. Those numbers are set based on that idea. Now, when the majority of anglers go out and are more successful than they ever have been before, I don't know what the numbers are. No one does. It's different for every body of water and species. But I think it's fair to say that with this technology, you have the potential to be more successful. Do the fish limits even apply anymore? Like that's just, that's something they're wrestling with and trying to preserve quality fishing, because I don't care what I'm catching them on as much, as long as I can go out and still experience catching. I don't want it to be this situation where fish are so pressured or there's so few of them that fishing is harder and harder to do it. I think that scares away people from the sport long term. I think short term, it's great right now. I think long term, it scares people away. Just my thoughts.
I couldn't agree more. Nope, I couldn't agree more. And it's like you said, it's a video game. So we're getting a younger, new generation involved, and it is cool watching them on the screen and doing it. You still got to catch them, but people didn't grow up like you and I and many others having to read the In-Fisherman magazines, get up Saturday morning to watch fishing shows, not cartoons,
right?
And, to understand those concepts of when they spawn, where they spawn, what's the movement, rivers versus lakes versus Great Lakes, all this stuff, so we can maybe eliminate a little bit by running to a spot where we know they're going to be, because that's where they should be, versus having to spend a whole ton of time driving around.
Oh my God.
But the learning curve for new anglers coming up days, which you and I are part of this, I don't know if it's a problem, it's getting them out there, is the educational path they have to learn this stuff with things like this and the YouTube, with the technology. They can become tournament level pros super fast. College bass fishing, and all these clubs. Guys are, most guys will fish 20, 30 years before they ever even enter a tournament. And that's, starting that as a little child.
Right.
Now they're 14, 15 years old and they're like, sign me up, for the biggest event. I think I can compete. And
I got
sometimes they can.
Yeah. Sometimes they can. I have found too that I'm not as good at taking my face away from that screen when I need to. Sometimes I just get so enveloped in what I'm looking at that the fun of seeing fish react to your bait becomes more of the game than the fishing part of it. And I'm like, I'm a fisherman. I'm an angler. Mm-hmm. I'm not a video game purveyor chasing that dopamine high that I get when I see a fish react to my bait in a positive way. So like, yeah, it's hard for me. It's maybe we're just too old. I don't know what it is.
I don't. I use it to find them and to go, that's not a rock. It swam, it moved. It's not a log. And then I throw at it, and I can't. The hummingbird one's great, but it's got a little ways to go, and I just can't see my jig drop 50 feet out there or not. But I can see the fish, and that's, to me, I don't need to see it, chase it, follow it, bite it. I mean, I'd like to be able to see it to react to it, but if I can, I know it's there, whether it's the right species, size, whatever the case is. But then I'm gonna make that cast, and then I'm already moved on. I'm panning. I'm looking for the next cast. A lot of times you only get one shot at these fish, and then they're out of there.
For sure. I think the other interesting thing, we're definitely seeing, at least in some of the pressured bodies of water that I fish, primarily for panfish, but even walleyes too. Fish are spooking to it. Like they are negatively responding to the sound that beam creates. And I've got one lake here locally. I'll just tell you right now, if I shine a beam at a school of crappies, they immediately start to disperse. I mean, not like they don't like churn outside of their skin to swim away, but they immediately start to dissipate. You just watch them fade away in seconds. And so like this idea of like drilling on top of them in the ice or even pitching to them while you're focusing that beam on them, like that's becoming less and less of a thing. And I heard reports of that last summer on Leech, Winnie, some of the other big walleye waters that buddies of mine fish. So yeah, I don't think they like that sound, that noise. I think there's a lot of people that have confirmed that, right?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing up on Takakawea, that they're becoming pretty in tune with it real fast. So like anything, it's going to evolve, and these things come up, and then they fade away, or we had to figure out how to, manipulate the thing. Like, you hit them with that, and then you're out of there, right? You don't need to hold it on them and watch the whole thing. And but you got the Garmins, you got the Birds, you got the Lowrance, the Active Target, the Live Scopes, the Mega Live. I mean, they're all putting out a little bit of a different noise and different size cone, and I mean, to each is their own. So we'll see where that goes and how it works. But it is I can contest in the tournament world, if you don't have it and you're not playing that game, you're not in the game.
No. Yeah.
So that's just
no doubt. I even
it's just the way it is.
It is even amongst guides, that I know, and they have to run it. I mean, if they're trying to find fish for clients on a reliable basis, and it's just kind of what they need to have. It's part of their kit.
It's another tool in the toolbox. So if you could afford it and get on it, if you already have the electronics in your boat, then you're talking, like a $1,500 add-on. Now, if you're switching brands or moving all up, then you're $3,000 or so. But if you fish for a living, or if you can afford it, you're going to enjoy it. I mean, it's cool. But I interviewed Mike McClellan or Cleland a couple years ago for a press release for Spro or somebody. Well, we talked about it. And I just said, good and bad is it sucks you in. And now you're seeing things you didn't know were there before.
Yes.
But he said, same thing that I was always thinking, is that you're spending so much time on that one fish where you would have made 2 or 3 casts before and moved on.
Right.
But now you're throwing 5 different baits at it, trying to get it. And the reality is it's just not going to bite.
Right.
Sometimes they're just not going to go. They're in that mood. Yep. And he's like, I always spend 15, 20 minutes, which normally would have been a minute. He goes, and I wasted all that time.
I do that. I'm totally guilty
when to hold them and fold them.
I'm totally guilty of that. And that's something I'm trying to break myself of, because sometimes it's just too juicy. They're in the right spot where you expected them to be, doing the right thing, looking like everything's right, and it's wrong. And you're trying to force the situation. It just isn't going to work. Walk away. Drive away.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And it's hard not to when you see it. And if it does react, maybe
Oh,
just a little bit, you're like, all right, you're saying there's a chance. I just got a different color, different, plastic, different, whatever, slow it
yeah.
down, speed it up. What is it? You know, it's, but I, like you, and I've seen this a lot with guys out on the tournament trail with and they're catching them and they're kicking my butt because they're good at it, but their face is down in that graph. And I'm just like, man, look up. Look around you. This is beautiful. You're on the
Enjoy.
Missouri River. You're in North Dakota, South Dakota. You're missing out. Yeah, you're missing what you're here for, of what
Couldn't agree
got
more.
you to this place. And this is what you see around you. So
Yeah, and what you leave,
take it in when you can take it in. But I mean, I get it. It's tournaments.
You end up leaving with a bad case of tech neck, not not what you were looking for. Maybe a little bit of refreshment, enjoyment in the outdoors, right?
We should all maybe get into a chiropractor because there's going to be a pretty good business down the road for all these bad backs and necks from forward facing sonar.
Well,
We need to be looking at the retirement side of things, Joel, at this point, and we need to look down the road.
right. It's interesting. You probably saw some of the hubbub about the barotrauma and how forward facing was relating to some of that
Yeah.
stuff, all the barotrauma study in Minnesota. And it's funny to me. It's almost comical because barotrauma is not a new thing. I mean, it's been around in the scientific
Right.
literature for the better part of decades, and everything from fish in the Pacific Ocean to freshwater fish and panfish and walleyes and all that. And it's interesting. I just that thing got so publicized, and really, I think if people would take the time to look back on it and understand it a little bit better, it's nothing new. It's nothing crazy. I'm really confused as to why it's such a hot button issue.
Yeah, and we've had to deal with plenty of that this fall and even right now fishing the river because these fish, the walleye, are on these deep holes,
Yeah,
35 to 40 something feet deep. That's about as deep as it gets where I'm at, Lewis and Clark. But I noticed a lot in the late fall, and you're catching 12 and 13, 14-inch saugers, and they're floating on the surface, and the eagles are flying in, and we're feeding the eagles real good. But
right.
as I watched guys fishing, I noticed they were going slow. They were bringing them up real slow and then basically darting them back into the water. So they're getting,
Mm-hmm.
And you can see those on your live go all the way down. Now, do they stay down? That's what people are seeing in the video, right? Angler Bus puts out. They're like, look, they swam down, but it's 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours. Where's that fish? What happened then?
Yeah.
That's what we don't know. That's where the
fish.
DNR comes in doing their studies.
Right. Barotrauma kills fish. It just does. And, it's so funny because over the years, you've seen all the crazy techniques, blowing in a crappie's mouth to push its distended stomach back in,
Right.
Darting them down. There's all kinds of crazy
Fizzing.
techniques. Fizzing used to be a big deal. Some people still believe in it. I think it's crazy. You're sticking a needle in the side of a fish and you're not really trained as to know exactly where you're supposed to bleed that fish. You might be stabbing it in the spine or the heart or whatever, right? And then you're throwing it back and yeah, it's gone. So everything must be great. Well, I can tell you from an ice fishing perspective, I've seen all of those things tried. And then we go out to the spot that the next day and we shine an underwater camera under the ice. And it looks like, the ceiling's just loaded with dead crappies that we thought we successfully released the day before. And so you gather those up as best you can from under the ice and you keep them and you clean them. And I don't think there's a way around the fact that at depth, you're going to kill fish. So you just need to respond as an angler accordingly.
Yeah, it's a great time to harvest, obviously, if you're going to go out,
Yeah.
plan on keeping some fish. And
Yeah, exactly.
you can bring them up slow. In the ice, when I'm fishing deeper, I keep the drag real loose so that I keep tension, and I can, just keep going. So without even trying, you're bringing that fish up real slow. Or even if you can pause it, now there's a good chance of losing it if you just stop and let it swim around a little bit. I tried that the other day and lost 2 probably 15, 16-inch walleyes. But I'm like, whatever. I got the bite. I got to fight it for a little bit. It got off. I'd rather it get off than me bring it up and I have its air bladder. I mean, you and I, if we get out of bed and our lungs are sitting out of our mouth, it's game over. So that's it.
That would be over. No doubt.
So yeah, be responsible. Keep what you plan on keeping fish when you're fishing deep. I don't, 100% of them aren't dying, I'm sure. And it comes to all the conservation stuff and just being responsible about whatever you're doing out there. And there's times you're there's just no way around it. Maybe you're in a tournament
right.
and that's just what it is. But usually that's a kill tournament, and there's a place for those fish to go. So
right. No harm in keeping fish.
And if you don't want them, keep them, because no, I mean, somebody does, and that's what our GFPs or DNRs are for, is to do these gillnet surveys and say the fishery is healthy. We anticipate, of course, you're gonna kill some here and there, but to your point, that they were basing their limits off of not ever being successful. Yeah. Now everybody's so much more successful with forward-facing sonar. I mean, that same trend is happening like in the archery world with the evolution of, the longbow to the compound bow to the crossbow. And that's, I know we've had that over here where they have adjusted the non-resident archery permits because the kill rate success is 75, 80% now. That I'm just throwing that number out there. I read it somewhere. I don't remember exactly what it is. But it used to be like 20 or 30%. Sure. Now you can use a crossbow. You don't have to be handicapped or disabled, whatever the case is, to get a crossbow. Anybody can use a crossbow. Well, that if you ever shot one, you can put a scope on that thing and shoot your deer at 100 yards. I don't even shoot them at 100 yards with my rifle.
It's unreal. I know. Yeah. And it's so funny because we've seen hunter and angler numbers kind of change over time, right? Like hunter numbers have been declining nationwide, but when COVID happened, both of them got a little boost. Angling got a much bigger boost than did hunting, but both of them got a boost. Yep. And it's interesting because you have less people that are being more successful. Maybe the numbers all play out, but a little bit of studying needs to be done to just try and figure out at what level of success with X level of participation does the quality of the experience fade out? Because that's what I'm interested in. I don't need these days to fish every single day, but when I fish, I want it to be a great experience. Call me selfish in that way, but I'm just looking for the best experience possible every time I go out. Quality, right?
Right, and it doesn't always mean to catch or kill.
No, it doesn't. Nope. Just having a great day on the water especially with kids, right? Like I want to show them something cool, right, something different, something new, have them have an experience. That's the goal anymore. You're going to slay them some days, and we'll certainly remember those days with favor,
but right. But if you have those days all the time, they're not near as special as 100%. That 1, 2, 3 days a year when it was on.
Couldn't agree more.
And you got your boys are young teenagers now. I mean, they're at that age where they're like, "Hey, let's go, Dad," and they can go. They can do it on their own. I mean, yep. They're all in. Yep. They're into this fishing thing, and you're not getting away from it whether you want to or not. So
right. Yeah, they push me to go more, and it's good. It's a good thing. I need that because I'm sure you get a little burnt out with all the stuff that you're doing. I mean, you're guiding and you're doing tournament angling. Sometimes it's hard to find time to get out on the water with the family because of all the other stuff that you do outside of the family time. But my kids push me. If we got conditions for it, we're trying to hit it for sure.
It is. That's what people think, and that you guide or you're living the dream, and and it's like, well, it's not lucrative by all means. It is enjoyable, but it's 10, 20% fishing and 80% business and marketing and other things, making sure those clients are continue to come in, and I can keep the other couple guides busy with them, and because you're not just supporting yourself, you're trying to support others, and then you also have your sponsor responsibilities. I need to go get all this stuff done to be able in the guide boat. They're like, well, this is we're having fun, it's all good. What do you do when you're not doing this? I'm like, I'm doing this. Okay, we're gonna get done fishing a day, and maybe the day kind of sucked and the bite was off or fish were just gone. I'm like, I'm gonna be out for the next 3 or 4 hours finding what wasn't working, see where these fish went, so that tomorrow people have a better experience than today's people.
Sure. Yeah.
Or you're just going out to get some content for the, sponsor or whatever. I'm like, this is it. This is what we do. So when does the family get to go, right? It's like, and getting at kind of the point where we can sometimes set, I will try to schedule out of that and book it way in advance and just block those days out. Or, maybe leave my weekend open for the family and let the other guides that want to work those weekends take all those people out. But it's a short season sometimes, and you got to take everything you can get while you can get it.
Yeah, you said that business standpoint. You're right. For the first 10 years in the industry, for me, I didn't do that very well. I just went fishing and Had a great time. Lost a lot of money in the process. Self-funded all kinds of different fun
Yep.
things for the
Yep.
industry and other partners I had at the time. But after a while, you got to protect your ability to keep doing this, right? I mean, so you do that by becoming better at business and you know being more professional too, and learning how to develop things for your sponsors that are worthwhile for them too. Like you just get better at your craft over time, right?
Right. Yeah, so for those that don't know, Joel's done some seminars for the National Professional Angler Association conference on resumes, and I mean all that stuff comes back to business. We talked about it earlier with influencers and pro staff, and we had a previous podcast with Pat and I, and talked about that, the difference between a pro or pro staff versus a sponsorship. It's muddy waters, and and everybody wants to. It's like NASCAR, and put as many logos on my jersey as I can, or stickers on my truck, or pro staff for 9 different companies in their Facebook profile. And the reality is some of these people are charging you to be on those pro staff,
Yeah.
To in return offer you a 20% discount on something you could probably get anyway. I mean, the companies aren't stupid. They're making money on it, and they have to make money to support the whole programs.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think people just need to realize and put a value on yourself and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it comes back to quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. You got to be good at what you're doing to try and bring value. And if it doesn't work in terms of what you can provide for them and bringing a value, then it's probably not something you should be doing. I think a lot of people they struggle or strive in this influencer market to have sponsors or have brands that they represent. What if it's not a good fit? I mean, I've had to turn down certain opportunities because it just wasn't a good fit. And I didn't use their product as much as I could have or should have, or the way it should be used. It just didn't fit my fishing style. So, yeah, I can think of a couple of them right now that I'm sure you feel the same way, right? Like if you can't do good by it, what's the point in trying to take a check?
Yep. Nope. Exactly. Speaking of new products, have you used the 7 reels? Or are you still a diehard Daiwa guy?
Yeah, I've been a diehard Daiwa guy for years. I've used the 7 reels. In fact, it's funny you say that. I got 2 on my desk right now. I've got both the GS and the GX series.
But are just hanging up.
They're just hanging out over here off screen. But yeah, I had a chance to use them all last summer. I used them a lot for casting for both walleye and smallmouth on forward-facing sonar. So like for that application, they work really good. Out on the river, like spring walleye fishing, for us, it's spring. For you guys, you do it more parts of the year. Yeah. But for us, it's a real big spring push. And so pitching plastics, like they were really great for that because the drags were good. Like if I'd snag a buffalo or I'd hook into, let's say, a pike or something that was really big, going to test the drag up against cover and stuff. I was really impressed, especially with the GX. Like that sucker is awesome. It's a good looking reel.
I think they're like 22 pound drags or something on those things.
You can crank down. And, we're using braid on a lot of these anyway, especially out on the river. Yeah. You might have a leader tied in. You might not, depending on how dirty or dark, dank the water is. But, yeah, I've been a fan. I also use them for live bait rigging a few times up on Vermilion and a couple other big walleye waters. And, yeah, I like the large arbor size on the spool. They seem to both cast well, fit a fair amount of line, and the line pays on and pays off on the drag really well. So yeah, I've been a big fan. I've got a lot of Daiwa reels still, but I'm kind of in the process of moving over because I do like everything about them. They've just worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, they do. They feel good. That they're braid ready, which is nice. No backing required. It's got that little rubber band through the spool on there, and that wider spool makes that line come off.
Come on, like that's such a great idea. Why they all should have that, right? I mean, what did you used to do? Did you used to put down like electrical tape or something on the spool just to hold that before? Before that's what you had to do. So I like not having to do that.
Yep. I'd put a mono backing, or I would tape it down exactly, and then spool it on. And there's a few other ones out there I think that have a little something like that, but that one works. I got a couple of the GS 2000s. And yeah, I'm loving them. I used them last spring. Got Dan Johnson had some that I got to play with for one day. I'm like, this is legit. These are real.
Yep.
So
No
looking
doubt.
forward to getting those out, or to completely loading up the arsenal with them this year. 140 and 190 maybe. GS 140,
Yeah.
GX is 190.
Yeah, it corresponds to the rest of the market quite well.
Right.
Yep, right in there, 150 to 199 GS to GX, and yeah, it's interesting because we're always looking for, as walleye folks or multi-species folks, a reel model or two that you can just like invest in, right? That you can put across multiple different rods, have a pile of them, know how each one of them works. I don't love having a ton of different brands and a ton of different models mixed into my fleet. I kind of like having similar sizes, similar brands, similar models, because every time I pick up a different rod, then I just, the feel is what you expect. The performance is what you know. I'm kind of a fan of that approach. So yeah, I've got this 2500 series in the GS is probably going to be bread and butter for most of them. And then my real lightweight applications, some of the featherweight Legend series rods on the St. Croix side, Legend Extreme, Legend Tournament, Legend Elite. That's probably what I'll pair up with those, is this GX. So that's my strategy. That's how I'm going into the season.
Yep, me too. I'll mix. One time we'll mix them. I don't even mix brands, but I'll go the higher gear ratio, and maybe that's for the crankbait, rod or whatever the case it is. And I usually have to mark that one so I can remember.
Yeah.
But otherwise, keep them same across the board. I want the same feel. I got different rods for different situations, and I know that going into it. But if I got to pick one up and all of a sudden I got to lose on it, I'm like, this. It's just,
it doesn't feel right? It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah. It is tricky. So, and as a guide, I like to keep all the clients using the same rods and the same reels. It's inevitable. One guy's going to catch way more than the other. And if any husband and wife, the wife always outfishes the husband. It never fails. But I'm be like, you're all using the exact same stuff. You all have 10-pound Cigar Smackdown on that, 610 Icon, whatever it is, medium light rod with a 1/4 ounce Northland jig head and a 3-foot Cigar Gold label leader. You have the same stuff on. So I'm like, the problem is you're bass fishing with that rod, setting the hook and missing those, where she's just picking it up and reeling and never stopping. And I'm like, awesome. That hook's getting buried. And therefore, your wife's putting more fish in a boat than you are. And I'm sorry, it's just the way it is.
That's got to be hard.
If they don't, then they'll catch the bigger one. But I bet you 90% of the time, the women will catch more or a bigger fish. And I've seen it to where, sometimes these husbands are getting pissed. They're just like,
that's awesome. Hey, that's got to be a hard.
Only a few times where I thought they were going to kick them out of the boat. It is. It just, most time they're pretty encouraging and they're like, hey, all right, that's it. That's what it's all about. But then there's some that they get up in the front and they're just like, man, they get frustrated. They ain't catching them and their wife's catching them all. But I tell them right off the bat in the mornings, I'm like, here's what's going to happen. Just start to accept it right now. I'm not doing anything special. I may once in a while spin the boat around and, maybe put them on the right side where they're at, closer to a rock pile. But for the most part, I'm like, it's just the way it is, because they're keeping it simple, right? They're not falling out of their seat, setting the hook when it's a little tiny walleye biter. It's sucking on that live bait. So it is comical.
That is funny.
All right. Well, I know you're a busy man, Joel, and we've wrapped up. We've taken up your time this morning. I think we covered a lot of things. If there's one thing you could leave with the anglers out there, whether they're just weekend guys, industry guys, tournament pros, what's that Joel Nelson's golden nugget?
It's funny. I get asked that a fair amount. Like, could you give me one tip? What's one thing you could kind of help me out with on the water? And I try and keep my mind active when I'm out there, which is hard because you're paying attention to navigation, right? You're trying to position the boat. You're thinking about the people around you and you're trying to stay on fish. There's all these like physical things that you're doing that your mind is like working on that stuff. But I'm trying to think always about the next spot I'm going to head to. And I always want to know the why. And I encourage anglers, like, let's say you're new to angling and you've got the live stuff and it's helping you find fish. Answer the why. Why are those fish there to begin with? And as long as you know that, you're going to have a better idea on where to go to next. So I see too many people, okay, the fish aren't here, next spot. And they're not even thinking about why or where the next spot is. They're literally saying, oh, there's another point over there, kind of like the one I was just fishing. Or, hey, I think humps, there's a bunch of humps out there on Winnie. Let's just fish the next one. It's like, man, no. Dig in. Let's think a couple layers deeper and try and figure out, okay, well, I saw a bunch of bait perch up on these real shallow humps, and there weren't any walleyes up there, but a bunch of bait perch. And then I checked out a mid-level hump, and there were more nicer perch, and a couple walleyes slid off the sides. And then, this one had gravel versus this one had mud off the edge. Like, you're constantly trying to think, solve that puzzle. So my advice to anglers is don't turn your brain off and start hunting for spots on a map to just, go to. Think about what you're seeing, what fish are relating to, and what other spots out there might look similar to where you did have some success to repeat on. I see too many people on an average fishing day. They're just wild ass guessing their way through it. So I think if you put a little more thought into how you're fishing and why, be observational about what you're doing, you're going to have a lot better experience out of the water. There it is.
I think a lot of us are just wild ass guessing our way through life. So there's a lot of that out there.
That's true.
But you nailed it all ahead, the why, and that's a big thing. I used to always say, I say that to a lot of the nonprofits I'd work with is quit. Everybody's about the how and the what. It's the ultimate question and answer is the why. And it's not answer it 3 times. Ask somebody, well, why are you doing that? Well, this, why? And then about the 3rd time, it always seems like you get to the root of it where they pause and just go, well, I don't know. Or it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, it's probably not the right one. But if you can't answer the 3rd why, or you'll get to the root and you're like, because of this, I've seen this pattern. I've seen this gravel. Boom. They're going to slide up on top and eat those perch in the evening. They're down here now hanging out. It's a little deeper, overhead sun. Put all this together. But remember those places, because that's going to be your where later, in the day or what have you. So, but be observant to others around you, right? Hey, these guys are catching the hell out of them. Or what are they doing? Or their outside rods are going back when they're trolling when you turn, speed, or this charter boat's catching them on Lake Erie, but I'm not. He's clearly going faster.
Yeah.
Granted, which can obviously just mean I only go faster. I just need to bring them up in a water column, so just pay attention to what's happening and keep thinking. I live in my head about what's next, where am I going, why am I going to go there and win, know?
Yeah.
And then when you get them, why did I get them here at 10:15 today and not at 7:30 this morning?
And those are the most rewarding parts for me and probably for you about angling is when you can observationally work your mind through a pattern, have it be successful, and understand why it all worked out. That to me is like, that's a great feeling.
That's the gold nugget right there. And that is the good feeling. I mean, it's hunting in a sense, right? We're hunting, we're trying to figure it out, pattern these fish. And then when it all comes to, you're just like, okay, I got it, and now I'm ready to go do it again. Let me go somewhere else, find a different species, whatever the case may be, or just sit there and, hammer on some fish for a while and have a good day. So awesome stuff, Joel. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your time this morning. Maybe there's still some ice in the future. I think we got a little bit of cold coming after this week or two of real warm, but it probably won't be very good ice. But if not, we got open water around the corner, and I think you and I are both looking forward to that as much as we can. But be safe out there getting these photos and all this content created over the next month or so while you can for these companies. Everybody's going to see that hitting catalogs and social and everywhere, coming next year. Like I said, if you don't know who Joel Nelson is, check him out at Joel Nelson Outdoors and crawl out from underneath that rock, guys, because he's everywhere. Otter, right? Still doing a lot of stuff with Otter.
Yep. Otter, Markham, Ion Augers.
He's there just putting it out there, putting good stuff, good content. The man knows his stuff. So that is a wrap for us today. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits and Mr. Joel Nelson. You can find us right here on YouTube where you're watching this, over on any of those podcast platforms like Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, or around the Walleye Guys website as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on the water.
Thanks, Brian.